another episode of Cosmic Conversations. I am your hostess, Marla Martenson, and I'm back with Carol Howe, acclaimed author, counselor, and internationally recognized master teacher of A Course in Miracles. I love that book. A lot of you are fans of The Course in Miracles and follow that. And she was a personal friend of the co-scribe of this book, Bill Thetford, and she wrote his biography, Never Forget to Laugh, and also she's the author of Healing the Hurt Behind Addictions. Welcome back, Carol.
Thank you. I'm excited to be back. I love your show.
Oh, thank you. And everybody, excuse my glistening face. It's really hot and humid here in the San Fernando Valley, and our air conditioner's not working, so I'm going to be...
Well, at least, thank goodness, it's also hot and humid in Florida, but the air conditioning is doing its thing.
Oh, good. Woo! Okay, see, I can kind of fan myself. So, I thought we'd talk today about a subject that's in the Course in Miracles that talks about how can we bring peace in the world, because things are so chaotic now, and I think it causes a lot of anxiety in us. So, Carol, what does the Course say about peace in the world and how we can, deal with this?
Well, first of all, the whole entire purpose of A Course in Miracles is to bring us to a place of peace of mind, which most people don't have much of. Because once you're peaceful, what that implies is you feel safe. You can't be peaceful when you're all worried about what's going to happen and who's going to jump out of the next bush to get you, kind of thing. So it's like the goal is once I feel safe, I can be at peace. And until I am, I'm going to be so concerned about my own welfare and my own defenses and are they going to keep me safe and so on, that I don't have time or attention span for really anything or anyone else. It makes us very egocentric to be afraid.
Yes.
This is how not to be afraid is another way to say it. And of course it says love and fear are connected in that just as dark is the absence of light, fear is simply the absence of love. It's not some sort of an entity unto itself. Okay. It's like if you turn on the light, the dark in the room doesn't have a chance to revolt and say, I'm not leaving, I'm staying here anyway. And fear can't stay in the presence of love either. So far as the peace that seems to be lacking in the world, it's primarily lacking in us. Okay. So before I can do anything about anything, so to speak, I need to deal with my own distress and the things that I believe that make me feel unsafe. And the people around me, the people who are my most intimate connections, my family, the next door neighbor, my business partners, and so on and so forth, are going to reveal to me where I am being in conflict with myself. In other words, conflict with someone else is a mirror. And that can be on a personal level or a global level. But you might say a conflict between entities is really a reflection of conflict within myself. Mm-hmm. The things that I accuse myself of, the things that I feel comfortable with, we have really a mess going on inside our own heads. Yeah. And as that's resolved, you automatically are able, see, the ability to be empathetic is the frontal lobe of the brain.
Right.
And people are afraid this part turns off and I'm busy living out of the back part of the brain, the primitive part. I'm trying to survive and stay alive. Mm-hmm. So when people are scared, their capacity for empathy hasn't left, but their ability to access it within themselves has disappeared temporarily. So once I feel safe, then when other people are doing things that are clearly unloving and unhelpful, rather than hating them for it, I can have a greater sense of compassion. That doesn't mean condoning bad behavior, which people get all twitchy about. It means you can see, if I were wired the way they are, I would be doing the same thing.
Yes.
So it's developing a much more broad and empathetic and understanding view of first the problem was within me And then once that resolves, then I can see things differently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. And one thing I think you could give some great insight in is our current political climate. So the country's so divided, and I see for a while I had to go off Facebook. I couldn't go read the main feed and I have a lot of friends because I'm an author and stuff. So I was seeing a lot, and so many hateful comments about our now president. And okay, if you don't like him, you don't like him, but the hate and the mocking and the negativity, and I just don't see where, okay, if you don't agree with them or don't like them, that's one thing, but putting that negative, hate, I don't see how that's going to help anything.
It absolutely doesn't help, and thank you for asking that question, because as you could probably imagine, the day after the election, my phone rang a lot, with people who were very distressed. And it's like what I would say to everyone is, if you are distressed because of behavior that you see in anyone else, whether it's the president or your child or the next door neighbor, that person isn't causing the problem. What's happening is, let's just take any word, and this could be applied to anybody. I'm not picking on political figures at this moment.
Right.
Let's say that you see somebody whose behavior is dismissive and disrespectful.
Okay.
And you go, how could they be that way?
Yeah.
What that's telling you is that person's behavior is triggering, this is very important to hear, is triggering your own guilt about the times and places you have been dismissive and disrespectful, not just to other people, but to yourself. In all of the ways that we put ourselves down, we are enormously dismissive and disrespectful of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So what's happening with a president or in anybody else, when their behavior can be labeled in a certain way, I'm the one whose fear about being similarly unkind is being, you might say, triggered or brought into my awareness. And what that does is those thoughts that I have, that sense of guilt that I am the offender, the brain is triggered. That's a threatening thought as far as the brain is concerned. It just springs right into action, turns on the stress response, dumps all those toxic chemicals that are only designed to be in the system for a short little while into the body. And here's the key. Listen carefully. Those chemicals are taken into the cells of the body. That's what causes our upset state. Mm-hmm. You see, our upset state can never be caused by anything but my own thoughts, my own guilt-ridden, I don't think I'm a good person thought. And you see, sometimes that goes unconscious, or we just kind of throw it over in the corner of our minds like what I think doesn't matter, until something or someone comes along and really triggers that guilt in me, and then this body chemistry shift changes. So what I would want everybody to hear is, no one causes your distress. It's triggered by other people, never caused by it.
Yeah,
what do you think of that?
So many people are so upset and angry and mad and marching and yelling and breaking windows even and destroying property and setting flags on fire and, anything they can do. And
that distracts. That distracts the same way drugs and alcohol, sex, too much food, and technology distract. If I can get all caught up in what's the matter with somebody out there, it takes the attention away from what I fear is the deeply flawed part of myself. Mm-hmm. Now, notice that I said the word we think it is. We can't, in fact, ever stop being the way we were created, but our behavior and words can certainly be awful. Mm-hmm. But the basic presence of who we are cannot be ruined. And we're very afraid it can and that we have, which is why we feel like what the ego part of us is like, great, look how awful those people are, so that I don't have to deal with what I think about myself.
Yeah. I mean, personally, whatever president has ever been elected, whether it was the one, my candidate or not, I always said, okay, well, that's who it is. I'm going to send my best positive thoughts, love, light, energy over there so that they can do the best job they can. And I never thought of otherwise, never thought of bashing them or
No.
insulting. I think it's immature. I feel like it's a bunch of kids or something. How is, an elegant adult supposed to behave? I mean, I just can't get my head around it.
You put your finger on it, which is that when we're chronically stressed, we aren't acting like an adult.
No. Okay.
In other words, and that's not to be insulting. This is like brain chemistry. It's like 40% of the brain is the neocortex, the frontal lobe of the brain.
Yeah.
This is the part that's turned off it's why, for instance, have you ever tried to argue with somebody who's furious or somebody who's drunk? It's like, well, you get absolutely nowhere. It's because their faculties are literally offline. Okay. It's not like they've been ruined, but they are temporarily, sometimes a long time, temporarily offline. And so they are behaving much more primitively. Yes. There's no doubt about it. And you brought up another really excellent point, which is, and it feels like I've said this maybe possibly 1 million times in my life because it keeps needing to be said, and that is what I really want for someone else. Mm-hmm. You know, people go, I hate this person so much, and this could be anybody, the political figure, the person next door. Yeah. I really hope that happens to them. Yeah. Oh dear, do you know what? When whatever it is I desire or want or wish for someone else is visited upon me. Mm-hmm. You know what? Shall we say the universe, just to keep things simple, doesn't know that you're ordering up a bunch of disaster for them and you want it delivered to their front yard. All it knows is you're ordering up the dish of disaster, you will receive it. Yes. If people understood that one thing, it would be a lot more impetus to go, I think maybe I need to heal what's going on with me before I get all tangled up in deciding how somebody else ought to be different.
Yes, great point. That's like with the witches, it's the threefold rule. With what you wish upon someone else will come back on you 3 times worse. So do ye no harm. Yeah.
And in a sense, it's not, a lot of people say what goes around comes around. Mm-hmm. To amend that, it's like it doesn't go somewhere and come around. That thought of harm never leaves your own mind. So it's more like we keep the original and send out a carbon copy.
Oh, that's a very good point. Instead of thinking, ooh, I hope it doesn't come back and hit me, it's already there.
It's guaranteed 100% to hit you, and you think, oh, which is also what you just said about, I want to wish them well. Yeah. God bless you. Yes. Because same thing applies that way. As long as you realize anybody's bad behavior, quote unquote, is happening because of their fear. Mm-hmm. Now, if somebody is afraid, to decide you want to make them more afraid isn't smart. No. So whether that's ourselves or anyone else, so wishing someone well is a very healing, beneficent thing to do. And it's not, you might say, but they don't deserve it. It's like, well, yes, they do. Because all of us have been driven crazy by our own guilt. That does not mean if somebody has murdered somebody, you should say, fine, that's okay with me. We're not talking about behavior. We're talking about, the basic essence of anybody. Yeah. So when I'm wishing other people well and truly wanting them to feel safe so that the highest and best can come from them, I too benefit from that. In other words, that also, I keep the original and the carbon copy gets sent out.
Yeah, it is very just upsetting for me to think that how can this president is in office, so all this hate is going from millions of people towards him. How can our country thrive? This is who's there. So I just don't, it's very sad.
And see, so we'll do this kind of right on the spot if you're game for this. Okay. If not, we'll make this go away. Okay. And that is when you say, I feel distressed. Yeah. Because other people are behaving in this insane way,
okay, right,
then you go, oh, I wonder what this is really touching is my own fear and my own guilt for when I have been inappropriate in my angst or my anger towards somebody or something.
Well, so I would say, like, when you see something, like if you see a kid getting bullied at school, you know, you're like, oh, that's, you know, why you feel something. So I feel that people are kind of trying to tear down our country by spewing the negativity instead of bolstering. So I mean, so you feel. So what do you do? Yeah. So what do you do about that? Like, I'm not writing stuff on the internet or angry, but I feel like, oh gosh, it is an uneasy feeling.
Okay, what you want to do with any uneasy feeling that seems to be triggered by anything. In other words, it could be the political thing, or maybe your fish died. In other words, like, it doesn't matter what it is. Once that emotional state has been triggered by your own body chemistry, the absolute first thing that needs to be done is to simply take a deep breath and allow yourself to feel it, and this is the key, without thinking. In other words, once you're in the state, do this, kind of cut away the story as to what you think this upset is about, whether it's the fish dies, bullying in school, the president's a mess. In other words, whatever it is that you're thinking, the thinking at this point is the problem. So, so like, for instance, right now, if you just like let all the thinking disappear and you very kindly and in the easiest possible way allow yourself to feel how you feel. In other words, although it sounds very hokey, it's like you befriend this feeling. You get a kind of a gentle sense about allowing this to be here. And so as you just allow it to be here, no analysis, no who did what to whom, no thinking allowed. It's just you're kindly allowing the feeling to be. You see, when we're upset, it's because we're condemning something, you know, in ourselves or something else. But when you stop the condemning of the feeling and you establish a warmth about it, in other words, and it doesn't matter if this is grief, it doesn't matter if you just call it distress or nervousness, the same thing happens all the time. So that right now you decide, I'm going to have a kindly response to my own feeling state.
Okay.
Period. Yeah. And as you do that, you'll feel things settle. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Does it feel like things have settled a little bit?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Right. That is so you're making my case from this is just marvelous. You would think we had a script.
I know. Yeah.
And that is because you have just proven the point of how when you have an appropriate response to your own distress, your body chemistry changes that quickly. Mm-hmm. You mean if I would finally deal with my own stuff, I could come to a place of a calmer, more peaceful state, like fast? Yes.
Well, I think a great example, and that could help a lot of people, is marriage or, you know, romantic relationship where you're arguing with your spouse, or you're telling them what to do, or you're mad because they didn't put, you know, the dishes away, or they whatever, and that happens a lot. And it must be if somebody, let's say a spouse is saying, well, I don't like, you know, the fact that so my husband doesn't like the fact that I'm vegan. He gets mad. I don't even want you to say that word. I hate that word. You make people feel uncomfortable. If we go to someone's house for dinner, don't tell them you're vegan. It makes them feel uncomfortable. He's very angry about it. Plus other things that it's hard for him to accept some things that I do, maybe my spiritual practice. Anyway, would that be, I'm sure a lot of our viewers have had a similar issue where a spouse or someone doesn't like what they're doing or agree. Would you say that is coming from their own fear or insecurity, and then what can the person do? Use the same technique or just ignore them because you say, well, that's coming from their fear?
You can't ignore them. It's where if people will be, if he were, shall we say, aware of the ability to do this, rather than his saying, stop saying this because I'm uncomfortable, at least he has enough sense to say, I'm uncomfortable, rather than just making this all your fault. But if he could step back a step and say, you know what, it isn't your fault that he's uncomfortable. His discomfort has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with how you eat, nothing to do with your spiritual practice. It has to do with his own guilt and the places where he condemns himself or thinks he's not worthy or doesn't measure up, which, by the way, all human beings are afflicted with this because of the way we were wired when we were little.
Right.
So if couples could begin to realize one of the things that we're here together for is to realize our own woundedness and heal it. Not, I'm aware of my woundedness and it's your fault, so stop putting your finger on my wound. It would be, oh, if I'm wounded, this is my responsibility to heal.
Yeah.
So in a case like this, if he comes to the place where he could say, you know what, when we go someplace, and this talk about food comes up, I really feel distressed. In other words, rather than making the distress about you, he owns his own distress, which is going to actually be about something else, like whether people are going to laugh at him or
he's worried about what people will think. Yeah,
people are going to think. And you see, if we walk around in life worried about what people are going to think, we're living in a very small little comfort zone that's actually like a prison.
Yeah.
And then we decide if we will not do our healing, then we think my job is to tell everybody else how they need to be different so they won't interfere with my little bitty comfort zone. Oh, it's like that isn't reasonable. What we need to do is deal with our own healing. And then I was talking to a client about this earlier today. Your comfort zone gets larger and larger and larger and larger so that no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, no matter what's going on, it's like you feel comfortable and safe and you want to be there for whoever you're with. I went to the dentist yesterday for something that I had never done before, and it was a new guy. Now, most people don't think going to the dentist could possibly have anything fun about it.
Right.
But I always make everything fun. So when I met him the first time, he was a Latin man, I don't know, maybe 50-ish, something like that. And so I sat down, and, dentists are used to people kind of cowering before them. And I said, I am so glad to see that you have some gray hair and a receding hairline because now I know you must have some great experience. And he just laughed out loud. He said, oh, you're so right, I do. And it was like the whole thing was just fun. We kind of kidded back and forth, while all this was going on. Yeah. You can't do that if you're worried about what people are going to think about you. You can't have fun in life. You can't be at peace if you're not going to heal those wounds.
Yeah, we got to. I was listening to Hay House Radio yesterday. Nancy Levin, she has a show, and she said a quote that I rushed to write down. It was so great. She said, "No longer package yourself to be digestible to others." Isn't that great?
What a great one.
Yeah, because women were calling up saying, "No, they also with their spouse or with their this, they don't, they're and they're worried about everybody else and what they'll think about them and stuff." And if you just think about that, no longer package yourself to be digestible to others.
And the key is, it's like if, for instance, in this example that you've given about your husband's discomfort comes into his awareness when you do something that triggers it, that he might be laughed at or seen as weird.
His wife's a weirdo.
Whatever it might be. And so if he were willing to say that and not blame you for it, because the minute you start to blame, all communication is lost. Words are flying back and forth, but there's no communication. Nobody's listening. Everybody's in defense attack mode at that point. But had he done that, and if this had become the goal of the relationship, where where when these things come up, they could be seen as marvelous opportunities for healing instead of, well, this is horrible and shouldn't be happening. So if he were able to say, I feel so uncomfortable when you do the things you do.
Yeah.
Or actually, it would be better if he didn't even use the pronoun you. It's like, I feel so uncomfortable when this discussion about being a vegan comes up.
Yeah.
And if he did not attack you personally, and that would give you the space to say, I really hear how uncomfortable this is for you, and I really am really sorry that you feel uncomfortable, and I would love for us to do whatever we need to do so that situations like this aren't difficult, or whatever is your normal way of communicating. But you see, that way, when he says, stop being how you are, and you go, how annoying is that? And you either shut down or you retort back, then there's no love present. There's no communication present. They're just two people who aren't pleased with what's going on. And it could be the occasion of a lot of healing when people, like you could say, I feel distressed, if in fact this is the case. I'm making this up just for the sake of viewers. But if you said, well, I feel distressed when my life choices, where I'm trying to be the best I can be, I'm trying to learn the most, I'm trying to take the best care of myself, when that's not supported, I feel kind of left out. In other words, so because it's when people are distressed with one another, it's never about the events. The events are just triggering mechanism.
Okay.
It's always about our unhealed
That's
places.
interesting, because I'm on a liver cleanse now. So I've been on a cleanse. I've got my juice here, and so he's very upset about that. He's very scared. I could get sick. He might have to call the doctor. I might get bronchitis. I might faint. He's been a lot of arguing about that. He's very upset I'm on this cleanse. So now I can see that it's all his fears of what could happen. Yeah. And
so rather than fighting back with him, like, this is really a stupid thing for you to think. In other words, there's some empathy there. It's like, it would be wonderful if we could deal with how can you feel safer so that you don't feel such distress when I drink my brown jar of stuff, whatever it might be. So as we can all realize, to the degree that we can help one another feel safe, then our peace quotient grows and grows and grows. And then we can be in a world that looks like it's being torn asunder. But wherever we go, we bring our peace with us. We don't lose it when we're in those circumstances. We bring it with us, and that's far more contagious, and it has far more outreach than we might imagine, because our minds are one mind. And so every contribution that any one of us makes to the one mind, it's truly the idea that, rising waters float all boats kind of thing.
Wonderful. This is going to help a lot of people, because I know a lot of you out there have conflicts with your significant others or bosses or whatever. And when we just snap back and in reaction, never works. So,
because everybody's fear then is confirmed, and guilt is confirmed rather than loosened up and discarded.
Yes, wonderfully.
That's what I do all the time.
Thank you so much, Carol. And you guys, Carol's links are below. Go to her website, because she has a lot of amazing programs and things to offer you. And can people work with you directly? Do you do coaching?
Yes, I do. I do have time to do some private counseling. I sure do.
Okay, fantastic. All right. Much love, everyone. And let us know in the comments below what you're dealing with. And see you next time. Take care.
Bye. Thank you, dear.